Hello and welcome to In the Back Room. I'm Mr. Shank,
And I'm Mr. Woods.
and we're going to be talking about Mesopotamia today. But before we start, Mr. Woods, would you like to start us off with our quote?
Yes, I'll lead us off with our pledge. Temende causa est nascere.
Oh, that's the cue to begin. All right. So
Wonderful.
we're talking about Mesopotamia, and we're really just moving. We talked about the Hebrews in the last episode, and we're just moving northeast. I don't know how many. We're not going to get into how many miles again away from it is, but
Let's
we'll
not start
do
that.
we'll do like between 200 and 400 miles distance wise between Canaan and Mesopotamia. But you're basically just moving northeast.
Yes.
And Meso means middle, and Potamia is rivers, correct?
Yes.
Greek. Okay.
Yes, a little bit of Greek in there. Mesopotamia.
So it's the land between two rivers, and the two rivers we'll talk about here shortly.
Not to be confused with hippopotami.
Hippopotamia.
The hippopotamus. Hippo is horse. Potamoi is river. So a hippopotamus is a river horse.
River horse. Ah, okay. That's a fat river horse.
Yes, indeed.
So, developing of civilizations. The nickname often gives the earliest as these cradles of civilization. So, I don't know if they can see it on the map, but the Tigris and Euphrates are the rivers we're talking about, and I'm still
They're
curious.
kind of a purple. Is that like a dark?
Purple, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm still curious why Tigris and Euphrates in the Mesopotamia area developed first rather than the Nile River, considering came
because
from.
When you see a date, like I was actually looking at this today, so I think they put Mesopotamia at like 3200 BC or somewhere right thereabouts, and then Egypt is like 28. But so I mean, you're 400 years difference. But the other end of that is, what do you consider
Civilization?
Yeah, because there's a whole set of pharaohs or kings, at least before Menes in Egypt, the pre-dynastic Egypt.
Yeah.
Because obviously he was conquering somebody. So that begs the question of like, all right, so did they just not count? Are they not a civilization? Did they not have all of the little qualifications like a written language or architecture and art, or what didn't they have? What were they missing? So yeah, I don't know if maybe it's just that the Tigris and Euphrates river valleys were the first to kind of check all the boxes, but I know that goes back and forth because it wasn't always stated that the Tigris and Euphrates were first. For a long time, Egypt was first, and then so I don't know, maybe the more digging they do, the more it changes.
Yeah.
But you can't do any digging in Egypt right now unless you're actually Egyptian. The Egyptian government has kind of like staved off further archaeological digs at the moment. And I think that was in response to no, before that. I think it was in response to ISIS kind of destroying a lot of the artifacts. They didn't want to risk any of that. So they kind of, there's one guy who's a like really famous Egyptologist, and I'm going to look him up on my phone so I don't disappear. I have him on Twitter, but he's his name is.
To me, it's just like weird. Like I don't say I get why, but I understand why they're destroying it. They're trying to destroy anything that is, pagan religion, essentially anything that's not Islam. But because but like going back in time like that and destroying like old like religions that
the stuff that clearly nobody's actually practicing anymore.
Right. It would be like maybe me going and saying that, Apex is the best game ever, and I'm going to destroy all the other old games from like the Atari age to like
no more Doom, no more Pong. Only Apex is allowed to exist.
Okay. Good luck with that.
So that guy's name is Zahi Hawass. He is a Egyptologist, archaeologist, and former minister of the State of Antiquities Affairs in Egypt.
Good for him.
But he's actually Egyptian. He's the one that's usually on the documentaries wearing like the Indiana Jones hat.
Oh, he has like the scarf and he's like bald.
Yeah.
Yep. He's pretty good.
Yep.
I know you're talking
about. He is solid. But I know he still does some stuff like within the last year. I know I've seen. So I think they're allowed to dig like internally. They're people, but not outsiders.
Yeah, I think I saw some recent stuff that people were maybe I think he might have been in that. I don't know. They found some. I will talk about when we talk about mummification and so forth. But let's talk about the development of these civilizations. The
Hmm.
cradle of civilization, for whatever reason, the classification it starts in Mesopotamia, but at the same time or around the same time, you have civilizations popping up in Egypt around rivers like the Nile. We'll eventually talk about in the next episode, which would be episode 4 right now. Correct? Am I right on that? We on 4?
Yeah.
5?
Well, I
We
don't
did
know.
early man 1, and then we did Egypt 2, and then 3, 4.
Hebrews. So
Yeah,
yes, four.
it's
I'm on
the
four.
only reason we're saying this is because we were doing this 2 years ago, and we kind of like I had to renumber everything, so
This is
we're on
like
it.
the Kings of England were episode 4 and
Yep,
14 at the same
yep.
time.
So next episode is 4, so for future reference. So, but they'll develop around rivers in India and rivers in China, which we will get to. But humans, and we talked about this before, they're not going to, try to start a civilization in a desert. They're going to do it by a river because it's easier to live by a river than it is in a desert. So,
Yes, always cuddle up next to the river if possible.
yes, make sure it's
Yeah.
fresh water.
Yes,
Many
yes.
students for many years believe that you can just drink salt water.
And it'll be fine.
You'll be
Everything's
fine.
hunky dory.
Actually dehydrates
Yeah.
you
It's
quicker. Just an FYI.
So I think isn't that's like one of the leading causes of like death at sea is not actually well, I don't say leading causes, but like for people who are shipwrecked, like you just end up drinking the salt water and dying from dehydration faster.
Yeah. I mean, it's the most ironic thing. Water, water everywhere, but not a drop of drink.
Hmm.
So, but moving on. Well, the area we're talking about, I guess, is modern day the Middle East. So, if you've heard of the Middle East, this is basically the area at which we are talking about.
Yep.
So, to put that in reference, Iraq, Iran, Syria, that area.
Mhm.
But we'll talk first about who are the first people to live in this area and start the first civilization. Is it the first Mesopotamian civilization, or should we just classify them as the first ever civilization?
I mean, I guess in theory they would be the first ever civilization,
But
right?
so, do you know about Göbekli Tepe?
No.
So Göbekli Tepe is about 6,000 years old. It's in Turkey, and it it definitely like upends everything about what we think about the civilization because
Hmm.
they check all the boxes with like what
Okay.
it means to be a civilization, and for whatever reason, like I don't know if it's just like they don't want to change the history books, but it should be considered.
Well, I mean, that's even like when you think about some of those Neolithic, like Çatalhöyük or Jericho, like those are Neolithic sites where they had farming, they had cities or early cities. So what's yeah, when do we quantify it as a civilization exactly? Because those categories don't necessarily fit that bill either.
Right. I
Yeah,
sent you the,
yeah, I'm
the
gonna
link.
I'm gonna pull that
Uh,
up. So I'd never heard. Well, I almost feel like
you might
I
have.
almost feel like not. Almost feel like I heard about it from you. Did you learn about this when you were over there, or uh, like when you
I
went
had
to
heard about
Istanbul?
it. I had heard about it when I was over there, but I didn't explore it or anything. And then
Hmm.
I did a little more like research into it, and I was like, oh, well, that's kind of different than we teach. And that's the one thing too. There's history seems like it's very concrete, but it's very like ambiguous and it's ever changing. New information is found, and our interpretation, what we think we know, we don't really know because we just kind of take the best of evidence that we find. It could be something that maybe all humans come from Antarctica. We just haven't unearthed anything in Antarctica yet. We find, humans have been around for a million years and they started in Antarctica as opposed to 400,000 years ago, which we
Yeah,
covered
it's
in episode 1.
it's really that detective game. It's trying to piece together what you have and figure out your best guess at least of what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Sumerians are the first Mesopotamian civilization, or the first civilization as far as we know. And we're talking around the year 3200 BC, so
Mhm.
3,200 years before Christ. And I had to explain this to my class that they're not using BC. Like no one at this time is
Right.
using BC. Anytime that there's a BC range, no one's using it. because we have coined it so we can better categorize time because we base our time frame off of Jesus. No one's saying in the year of 3200 BC, hey, I can't wait till 3,200 years when Jesus Christ will be born and we can worship somebody that I don't even know exists yet. Doesn't make
Right,
sense.
right. And like I always mark it as like it's not even about changing like the BC to BCE. Like for these people, they were most likely if Egypt, for example, I know for a fact measured in years of the rule of a specific pharaoh.
Mhm.
So this is the fifth year of the third pharaoh of the 18th dynasty's reign, and so that's how you categorize time. And the Romans did something similar. It's like the third year in the reign of XYZ emperor.
Yeah.
So that's how you, because you didn't need to know. If you're the average person, you don't need to know about something that happened 500 years ago. You're focused on where's my bread going to come from today that I'm going to hopefully be able to eat.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not we think much more long range in terms of our understanding than people
We have more time to
in
stop
ancient
and think
times
about
did.
those things now that like things are taken care of for us. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what I was discussing with my class last week is that, technology is something that we strive so hard to make more time for ourselves, free time, so we can, in that free time, we can think of more ways to free up more time. So,
It's true.
yeah.
It's self-defeating almost.
Yeah, but it is because it's when things are so easy, then you don't grow and you don't strengthen, and it's just interesting to think where we're going to be, in 10 years, 20 years from now, the way
Yeah.
technology is advancing. But um, Sumerians started out with city states, and Mr. Was it what exactly is a city state?
Yeah, I was actually explaining this to my class today. So here's how I have explained it. Now we're up here in the great northern, well, middle state, I guess technically, of Pennsylvania,
Pennsylvania.
near Pittsburgh. So this is how I explained it, right? So
Yep.
a I'll get my Pittsburgh D's out. So we misconstrue the term state here in the United States because we're in a unique situation where we think of that as just a part of our country. But for everywhere else in the world, a state is the country itself. You have the state of China or the state of Taiwan, maybe depending, the state of Israel, the state of Italy, etc. So we are actually like 50 teeny tiny countries all smushed together under one overarching confederacy of the federal government. So we all work together, and the federal government leads us all in a similar direction. But I mean, every state has its own governing bodies, its own laws. So in essence, they are by themselves countries, and so that's where the term states and statehood comes from. So then, to back that out further, these city states are cities that operate that way. They operate as independent countries. So the Sumerian people were the Sumerian people, no matter whether they lived in or Nippur or Lagash or wherever. They were culturally the same. They're gonna have the same language, the same ethnicity across the board. Probably overall the same religion, though they may highlight different gods as more significant to their city. Overall, it's the same, but it's a difference like Pittsburgh and Cleveland, right? Essentially, they're all Americans. They all probably worship to the same spectrum of religious beliefs. Ethnically and racially, they're probably roughly the same. I would be willing to bet the same spectrum and averages, or at least close. So economically, the same. Maybe, yeah, I'd be willing to bet economically the same too, because that's pretty well distributed.
It
But
is.
they hate one another over sports teams. Right, something so trivial, but you will see cars flipped and stuff set on fire over
Yep.
sports teams. That's basically the differences that you're looking at with these city states, right? So basically everything about the people inhabiting them is the same, except they have rivalries with one another over some minor triviality.
That's a good way of putting it. I like that. Yeah. Hopefully that makes sense to them. It makes perfect sense to me.
And if it doesn't, tough.
Yeah. What are you gonna do?
I mean, that's really the best way I can think of to explain it, other than breaking down their separate countries. And yes, they're close to one another, so they're going to fight, but they're also a lot like each other, so they'll trade and be friends.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about city states when we talk about Greece and the Mayans, and the Italian city states and during the Renaissance. So
Hmm.
we'll get more into city states. But the first time you encounter a city state is here in Mesopotamia. We haven't talked about city states in Egypt, and obviously not in early man, but now this is the first time a kind of a new structure in government is appearing.
Hmm.
And these Sumerians will develop a writing system, and this is the world's first written language. And it's a system, it's called cuneiform, which is a system of triangles and lines. And you're not using, ink and paper. You're using like a wooden edge tool, right? Something like
Hmm.
that. Would it be wooden?
Yeah. Yeah, I would assume wood or some
Press
type
it
of
to the
reed or
clay.
something. Hmm.
Yeah, I wouldn't think it'd be anything other than that. And for the most part, it's going to be lines and triangles. But I mean, that's like the basic portion of it. But yeah, you're communicating. And I still remember my high school teacher, Mr. Muir, told me this is when I had ancient history. And I didn't have ancient history until I was in 11th grade.
Hmm.
And he was saying that the first time there was like written language, it was like somebody was using sorcery. And he was saying that I'm going to write an idea down on, and he described a paper or a tablet, and I'm going to give that paper, that tablet to a person a mile down the road. And that person's going to read exactly what I just said. And the person that had to deliver it didn't believe it because he never had encountered this written language before. And he delivered that written language that was on that tablet, we'll say, to the other person. He read it off verbatim, and he thought the guy that wrote it was a sorcerer. Like he's using magic. Like he
Hmm.
must be a wizard or something. And to a ignorant person of written language, it would seem out of this world. It would seem like he's some possessed or a sorcerer. But you really the only way to create, and one of the hallmarks of civilization is writing, and that's probably why they're credited with this, the first civilization. But I mean, it's like a second brain. You only have
Hmm.
so much storage up in your head. You have to be able to store it somewhere else. It's like your external hard drive, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, basically. And it's, and I always like to think of it too, is it's your way of communicating across time.
yeah.
I mean, granted that they might be edited, but so the Epic of Gilgamesh is a good example. This is a text that's several thousand years old, and granted it might be incomplete in parts, but I can read, so I can pull it out and I can read something that is a story that the same people, humans, several thousand years ago, were telling one another, or reading to one another, or reading to themselves. I have Herodotus here from when we get to the Persians, but so like I've got Herodotus sitting right here, his histories. I can read this, and I'm reading the same thing that this guy was putting on paper 2,500 years ago. Which is just when you start to think about it like that, it kind of becomes an incredible thing. And writing is such a powerful tool that we just don't take advantage of,
Hmm.
or rather, we even take it for granted, right? So the example I gave, and I don't know if I ever told you about this when I was house hunting up here. There was the house that I passed up, which I'm glad I did because I like the house that we have now. But so we were shopping houses, and my realtor, when we kind of found one we liked, he said, "Why don't you write a letter? So you're pretty good at writing. Why don't you write a letter to the owners and just tell them what you think." And who knows, maybe they'll knock a few bucks off the price. I'm in it for any kind of discount I can get. So I wrote just a nice letter about kind of like the feel that I got when I went through the house, and I put some of my emotions in there, and just kind of explained how it would fit well with our family. They took the price from 100 and I think it was 145,000 and dropped it to 120,000. Like the lady called the realtor, knocked $25,000 off the price, and she's like, "We'll do this for you if you guys want it."
Wow, that's
Now we ended up not getting, because as soon as that happened, I was like, "Oh my, really? No way!" And like even this house, I wrote a letter and got the price down because we couldn't afford it. The house that we bought, we just, it was outside of what the bank would loan us,
mhm.
and I needed the price to drop $5,000. So I laid everything out there. I was like, "Look, this is what I can do. If you'll meet me here, it's a done deal." And they
Yeah,
did. So we were able to get it.
that's
It wasn't the back and forth negotiation. It was a letter. Boom. And that's just the even today, like if you got a letter in the mail from somebody that sat down and wrote, even typed you a letter, it's different than an email. It's different than a text message. Um, it has more of a more personal feel, and it's in a way it can be more powerful. And we take that for granted all the time because we use it, we use it in shorthand or in text message in different forms, and we tend to write how we speak, which just kind of oversimplifies the language, especially English being so complex. You can do a lot with it,
Hmm.
um, and you can, yeah, you can really put some powerful things out there,
That's
and that
crazy.
all started here.
Yeah, I mean you're right. We do take it for granted. We definitely need to keep incorporating the written language as much as we can because I mean in a lot of ways we are kind of losing writing essentially, which is a shame. But I mean I don't know if there's anything that can really stop it right now. I feel like I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know, but it is. It's not something that comes naturally to most people. Like
Mhm.
I was going through grading essays for, I won't say which class because they may be watching, but for one of my classes, and I sent a message to a student that I read what this person had posted as their discussion information. It was a lot that they put out there. I was just very impressed with the level of writing and the use of vocabulary that I gave them the credit that they were due, and then made a note that you are a wordsmith. This is really powerful, and that's a gift I hope you develop because it's not one that everybody has.
Yeah.
It's just it's encouraging to see that there are still people out there that either possess that talent or have worked at it, to perfect the art or whatever they want to achieve. I just wish my handwriting matched my ability to write. Wouldn't that be?
I just
You
wish
have
my
nice. You have nice. Well, not.
absolutely
You
not.
have no. So you have your handwriting isn't wonderful.
No,
Your
it's
writing on a board isn't bad.
no, that I'll agree with. But now I don't really write on boards very much anymore.
True.
So
True.
I don't know.
But I mean, like, there's a like a subreddit I was subscribed to that was just handwriting. Some people have some, like, it looks like typed, like some outstanding handwriting. I'm like, it just makes me feel awful about ever turning anything with my handwriting on it. So it's garbage
Well,
compared to
with the
some folks.
digital age, we're not going to really have to worry about that too much longer. Those days,
Yeah,
I think,
remember when cursive was going to be the big deal?
yeah, they don't really teach that. I don't think they much anymore.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I
It's a
see a
long
kid
time.
occasionally that'll do
Some
it, but
kids practice it on their own. Like they
some
just
kids
learn
can't read it. They
because.
see cursive and can't read it.
Yeah,
Like and not all the letters are that strange, but I read a hybrid of the two. I think
yeah.
that's
There are some
print
letters
and cursive.
I can't make that very well, and I kind of just make like a half normal print, half cursive, forward.
Well, some of them I don't even remember how to do. Like it's one of those things where I'm sure the same would be with cuneiform. If you learned to do it, if you don't practice it, you'll forget like
Yeah,
the letters. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't tell you how to start a capital F in cursive to save my life. I mean, like some of them I know, but some are just I have no idea.
yeah. I probably just make an F and make like a little swoop randomly on the top of it.
Yeah, yeah, just a stylized F and call it a day.
Yeah, I add some character to that F.
Yeah, my middle school teachers would be very disappointed in me at this point.
Um, yeah, and I remember like when we had to do like actual writing that was on paper for like with the students and trying to read some of their handwriting. It was
Mm,
like trying to like use the enigma to like break the German code.
yeah,
It was
really.
so intense.
Yeah, so there were some that I definitely felt a sense of pride being able to read, especially when we did like reading process guides, and you'd have to actually read
Yeah,
full set or attempted full sentence answers for everything.
I felt like a cryptographer or whatever it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I didn't get paid enough to do that.
yeah, yeah. It's true.
Decode that.
All right, let's get back on track here. The Epic of Gilgamesh, as you mentioned, that is the oldest story, right?
As
I
far
guess
as it's
epic, right?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, it is considered the oldest oldest poem in the world. Now, I'm not sure if they would regard it as like the oldest then story or the oldest novel. I guess it's not really a novel, but I guess it would have to be if it's the oldest poem. It has to be then like the oldest recorded story. Um, I mean, the Epic of Gilgamesh is fairly lengthy. It's
Yeah.
well, I mean, it depends on the print, but it's 100 and some pages.
Not embellished at all, right?
Not at all. Not at all.
All completely true.
That was the thing I brought up to my classes. I was like, look, the guy claims to be 1/3 God and 2/3 man. Now you explain to me how does that math check out? You know what I mean? Like he had two human parents and then a third party DNA entered the picture. Like, where do you become 1/3? You know what I mean?
Maybe someone like an alien race injects
Maybe
you with
one of his parents was 1/16th and the other one was like 1/8, and then together.
Or the 1/3 is from the aliens and they
Easy, Alex
injected him
Jones.
with it.
Easy.
And the 2/3 are just normal parents, normal people, right? Problem solved, issue solved. We're good.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
there's no so but yeah, it's an interesting, definitely just an interesting story, just in general. I'm surprised they haven't made a movie about it.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah. I feel like that. There's a pitch.
Mm,
Do the movie for the Epic of Gilgamesh.
pretty
Who would
good.
you cast as Gilgamesh?
That's tough because you want to go right to The Rock because he's great in everything.
That was my initial reaction was The Rock, and that's strictly because of Scorpion King.
Yeah, and he has the size, and now he has like what
Yeah.
20 years of better acting skills now. So I'm a little bit with Scorpion King.
Don't give him too much credit in the acting
I
field.
mean, if anybody was 1/3 God, I think it would be The Rock.
It may be. Yeah.
I think he ripped that game off.
I'd like to see The Rock in a giant like braided beard like Gilgamesh has. Yeah, but not to like the Sumerian style where it's like the square braids.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Yeah, no, Hercules. They did a good job with that because it didn't even look like him till he talked.
All right, Sumerian achievements. So the ziggurats were Sumerian temples, which also housed their priests and stored their grain. This isn't like the pyramids as you would think. These ziggurats are not like, straight into a peak like the pyramids in Egypt. They're not like a step pyramid, but they're kind of like ramped fortresses that are kind of like pyramids. I don't really know how to describe that.
That's not a bad description. That's kind of the role they serve because the priests, in Sumerian belief, the priests are the top of the food chain. They're above even your kings. So they're going to be in the most defensible location. And that's, like you said, for the grain storage, you're going to want to put that somewhere where it's safe. So, I mean, a fort is not a bad analogy there.
Now, is that picture actually like in the Middle East? Is that from that time period? Because I've seen that picture a million times. I feel like
so I have mixed understandings on this. So my initial gut reaction would be no, because it looks pretty well done, but it's also not perfect. It is somewhat in ruins. If you look like that top portion where it kind of looks like a hilltop up there, it's not showing it complete. So I think that's the great ziggurat of Ur. No, I'm gonna have to look. See, now watch. I'll vanish when we turn this.
I'll go into achievements. Besides creating the world's first cities and civilization and the written language, like we talked about, Sumerians created it all, right? Well,
everything.
They created the wheel, which we tend to think like caveman did and all like the cartoons and stuff, but actually it was the Sumerians. This is in the Middle East, right? They did arches. We tend to think maybe the Romans or the Greeks or something, but technically the Sumerians did it first. They also invented the plow. Math based on a number of 60. Math is kind of all around us in different styles all around us. It's just really waiting to be discovered. Some art and mythology and literature we know with the Epic of Gilgamesh. So the Sumerians are all over the place when it comes to achievements.
Okay, before I go to the ziggurat, because I did look it up, I can count the way the Sumerians did. You can count to
Like,
60 on two hands.
okay.
Okay, so because I actually looked this up one year because I wanted to move this camera back. So
Okay.
okay, so if you've got your two hands, that's going to blur half of my hand. So you take your thumb on one of your hands and you use it to count the joints of your fingers. So you've got basically three knuckles for each finger, right? So you count across. You would do like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you can get to 12 five times: 12, 24, 36, 48, 60.
What constitutes a knuckle, though?
Wow, so it's like all the bends of your fingers. So your first, like your kind of initial digit bend at the front of like your pointer finger, then the middle, like your larger, um, I guess, bend in the digit, and then your actual knuckle where your finger connects to your hand.
Hmm.
So that's the 3 points on which they count for those four fingers, which gets you to 12, and then 5 times 12 is 60.
Makes
And
sense.
that's 60 60 seconds, 60 minutes,
Gone in 60
360
seconds.
degrees. Yes, great. Great. I never had actually watched the original until
Wait.
just a few years ago. There's a Gone in 60 Seconds is it's a remake.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The one with Nick Cage.
Was it faster?
Yeah.
Gone in like 90 seconds before?
I want to say Steve McQueen was in the original. I don't know that for a fact off the top of my head, but I think it was Steve McQueen. It wasn't. I mean, I didn't. It wasn't bad. It was for its time and
Yeah.
stuff, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I.
Nicolas Cage and Tiger King. Yeah.
My cat's playing with like a squeaky cat toy over in the corner over there, so he's like looking at me now, like, am I in trouble?
Might be.
Yeah, so you are. Oh
So,
wait, ziggurat. Go back.
oh, okay.
I forgot. So it's the Great Ziggurat of Ur, constructed somewhere in like the 2300s BC. It's associated with the Neo-Assyrians, but it collapsed. Was it BC sixth, around the 6th century? Yes, BC is where the top of it kind of collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's open right now until 6 p.m. It's located in modern day. Located in modern day. Oh man, I'm gonna butcher this. Nasiriyah, Iraq. So it's a city. Where are we at in Iraq? Just for reference, the Talil province. So like, would this be probably about 150, 180 miles southeast of Baghdad, like west of Basra.
Yeah, that's what I was about. I was gonna say. Yeah, took
Yeah,
the word right
almost.
out of my
Yeah,
mouth.
yeah, right out, almost exactly.
My internal geolocation was about to say that. So
Just like it was last episode.
yeah,
Square mile.
well,
Oh man.
I was a little off center.
You know what the problem was with that though? We were
Uh,
thinking. So I was thinking like 300 miles in length, and then just going, okay, well, 300 square miles, but it would be 300 times 300, which actually puts us close to where we were thinking, right? Because that would be 300 times 300 would be like, so 9,000 or 90,000.
you said 300 times 300.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to. It'd be 4 zeros, right?
Yeah. So I might, here we go, calculator.
Yeah. So it would
This
be
is a perfect
90,
example of why.
right?
It would be 90,000. So, so 300 be able to second, but so that would be a square of the 300 miles. So if you think about like how thin a country like Israel is, it's probably something to the effect of like 300 by, like maybe 100 miles, maybe like 50, something like that.
I feel like this is going to be a theme every episode. We're going to talk about the geography and the time and the scale of Jerusalem slash
6.
Canaan. Just squeak it into every episode. The Akkadians. Sargon was the Akkadian leader who created the world's first empire. And so, what an empire is, it's you have multiple different cultures, civilizations under one rule. And the ruler of an empire is an emperor. And for whatever reason, it's very hard throughout the entire year. Mr. Woods knows that imperial and empire and emperor seem to all get mixed up, even though they're all of or relating to an empire,
You
right?
know why that is, though?
Why is
It's
that?
because our students are rebel scum.
Empire. Well, hopefully somebody gets that Star Wars joke. We'll
Eh,
see.
nobody will. Nobody will.
There'll be one kid actually laughing. Oh yeah, that's a good one.
It's
Yeah,
not one of the the pre-sequels
yeah, it's true. Oh,
or sequel prequel.
so bad.
I saw a
So
meme with a kid that they were asking to count. It's like, okay, George, what comes after 3, 4, 5? And it's like 6, 7, 8. And it's like, then why did you write 1, 2, 3? And it shows George Lucas like it's like that's pretty good.
oh my goodness. So they take the Akkadians are like, they're this kind of warrior culture taking over Mesopotamia, Iraq, Iran area, like we were talking about. And Sargon the second becomes the world's first emperor, um, likely born into lower class. But like most of these kind of emperors that kind of get their start and create an empire, like Cyrus is kind of the same way. We'll talk about him,
Mhm.
kind of starting from nothing and conquering people and getting a following and creating a huge, massive empire. And I feel like that was kind of like the cool thing to do back then was to, once it started, was like, all right, let's got to have an empire. Like, kind of like keeping up with
It's
the
the new
Johnsons,
fad.
like how like keeping up with the Johnsons were meaning to be like, okay, like they just our neighbors just got a brand new car. Well, we got to get a brand new car. I feel like people back then who were ambitious were like, well, you know, Sargon the second had an empire. I need to have an empire. I need to have bigger.
He conquered the Israelites. I have to have Israelite territory too, or otherwise I'm not going to be able to measure up.
Think of all the people that emulated Alexander the Great. Like everyone
No. I mean, you're exactly. But Pompey and Caesar were both like
in too.
wannabe. Yeah, yeah.
It's like
They'll
you can't even harass people. But
yeah.
anyways, that's what the
And
Acadians are. They're
only
the
one
world's first
Alexander.
empire, and Sargon the second is the world's first emperor. Okay, empire means you're ruling over multiple cultures under one strict rule. You're an emperor is higher than a king.
Yeah, you are in terms of Cyrus. You are the king of kings if you are an emperor.
Yes. And what I guess we're gonna get into, and this is why Mesopotamia is so messy and confusing. We're still talking about the same area. We're not moving from different locations. It's the same area, just more people are taking over the same exact spot. It would be like if over the next couple hundred years, people from outside kept taking over America. Let's say the Canadians invaded America and Canada ruled America for a while, for 100 years. And then Mexico took over Canada. And then all of a sudden Russia came in. And then, I don't know, like China comes in. And it's the same territory, but ruled by different groups of people. That's what Mesopotamia is. And we're just going over all different groups of people over what, thousands of years essentially, right?
Yeah,
Because
basically.
when we get to the probably the what we'll say, yeah, about 2,500 if we go maybe even 2,000, I guess, if you get all the way back to Sumerians and up until Xerxes. So
Yeah, because you figure that's taking you right up into the like the 400s or so.
yeah. Do you want to talk about the Babylonians and the Hammer of Abi?
Yeah, I can talk about that. I'm not going to pass up a chance to talk about Hammurabi. Looking at pictures real quick. So that top right is supposed to be, I think it's a recreation because there's no way they actually preserved this, but
Yeah.
the gates, the Ishtar gates, the gates of Ishtar, which is in dedication to the goddess Ishtar, one of the Mesopotamian. There's a lot of Mesopotamian gods and goddesses, and they don't get the attention they probably should. I don't know as much about them as I probably should. Like I know a few of their names. Like I know Ereshkigal she is the female goddess of death, I believe, or at least the underworld. But I don't know a whole lot about them. I can't go any deeper than that. But they had a very complex mythology of their own. But on the left of that, you see this big chunk of black stone with some carvings on it. So that's the stele of or stele. Stella. But so this is the carving of Hammurabi's law code. So this is the one that we have. There's more. It's like 7.5 feet tall. I didn't realize how tall it was. Like I knew it was big, obviously, but I didn't realize it was quite that large. Yeah, so 7.5 feet. And on top, you see, so Hammurabi is standing there before the sun god Shamash, who's giving him the laws. So not only is he putting these laws out there for everybody to see, but he's adding legitimacy to them. Like, hey, it's not me making these up. The god gave them to me, so we've got to follow it. But they're very specific laws. And so backing up, Hammurabi was a king. He's probably the most famous king of the Babylonians. And he's most famous for his law code, the eye for an eye type of law code. So, yeah. So the concept was that the law would apply to everyone, though not equally, and that it would be based essentially on like retaliation, that you're going to do unto others as is done unto you. So I pulled up. I want to read just a couple examples of them. So there's some there, but there's some that are just interesting. So this one. So anyone who is committing a robbery and is caught, he shall be put to death. And I remember reading, if you are actually committing burglary, if you're breaking into a house, yeah, here it is. If anyone breaks a hole into a house, so you break into someone's home, you shall be put to death before that hole, whatever you broke into the house, and then buried there. Right. So like if you break into someone's window to climb into their house and you're caught, you're put to death and then you're buried outside their window. It's kind of a message.
And there's one where if like your dad's like a house builder essentially, and he builds a crappy house and it falls down and like, kills maybe one of your sons or something like that, then the house builder's son gets killed, but not the house builder. It's like what? Why is this involved in this one? So there's some of them are really bizarre.
And this one's a good example of them being the law being unequally applied depending on who you are. So it says if a prisoner is to die in prison from being beaten or from like mistreatment, so the master of that prisoner is going to bring the person responsible before the judge. Now, if the person that died was a freeborn man, or I'm sorry, if the person that's basically responsible for the death of this prisoner is a freeborn man, then their son is going to be put to death. The person who died, if they're freeborn, then the son of the person responsible will be put to death. If the person who died was a slave, the person responsible has to pay like a fine, 1/3 of a mina of gold, which is like a measurement system. So they have to pay a fine if the person's a slave, but if they're freeborn, then they have to give up their own child. So it's just kind of that disproportionate apply of the law. But it's an attempt to establish a rule of law and hold everyone accountable to some degree.
And yeah, in some degree. RBG would probably wreak havoc on Hammurabi's 282
definitely.
specific laws, but
definitely, yeah, we're recording this in the aftermath of RBG's passing. It's Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who is Jewish. We should have referenced that back. I did not know that.
I did not know that until I saw, I think honestly today, I was watching Trevor Noah, and that was one of the because she says there's 3 things that are working, I think she said against her, is that she's Jewish, she's a woman, and I forget what the third one was. Like, and she just challenged at every corner, like, and stuck to her guns, and she knew like what equality really truly meant, and that's
Mhm.
it's sad. Yeah, it's really sad.
Yeah, she really is a good example
Pioneer.
of like an American champion, you
Yeah,
know.
notorious.
Yes. A lot of people don't get that that's the reference to like, you know, they just don't catch that that's not. I don't know. I forget when that there was like a the that was a like a documentary about her came out that they called that, and people just didn't. I think it was on some Twitter or something. Maybe it was before Twitter, Facebook, maybe. But yeah, people didn't catch that that was a reference to like Biggie Smalls or anything like
Yeah.
that. They just didn't. I don't know why that flew over them, but
Once they did figure that out, and they were like, "Well, don't you have a, problem or, being referenced towards Notorious B.I.G.?" And she's like, "Why would I have a problem with that?" She's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
"Don't." No, they're like, "What? You don't?" She's like, "I don't care." It was like a great reaction to it because they were looking for something. You're like, "Well, he's like
right.
a."
Anything that can be sensationalized.
Yeah, exactly. So, but, kudos to her.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, full circle, Hammurabi sets up these laws, and, RBG was the one that would eventually, like, obviously the laws have evolved over from this time
Mm-hmm.
period, but somebody has to set up these laws in order for us to build upon it, improve upon it. And, we look back even just, even when she was, I think, in like the 80s or something like that, where women couldn't even have credit cards, or they couldn't sign a mortgage without a man. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, we look at that and we laugh at that now, like, what were those people thinking? It's the same thing here, obviously. We're looking back and being like, well, this is crazy, but it's better than nothing, right?
Right.
You
Right.
have to have something set up where it is consistently anarchy. It's not even anarchy. I mean, it's nothing. It's just consistent chaos is what it
And when you think about it, like with how specific most of these laws are, you're writing these. I mean, these are being recorded in response to something. Nobody's like, oh, how can I protect people's personal property in a fire that may happen? Let me write out this law that's very complex and enumerates all these different avenues. No, it happened. It had to be adjudicated without the law. That became an excuse. So you know what? Now we got to put it. Now we got to carve it on the stone. We've got to add it to the list to make sure that in the future nobody can use this as an excuse. And so you're basically recording legal precedent.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I talk about each year is go look up your state's weirdest laws. Like, just type in, like, Virginia's weirdest laws, Pennsylvania's weirdest laws. Somebody did that. Whatever the
Yeah,
weird law is, somebody did that. Like, one of Pennsylvania ones is like, you can't sing in the shower, I think is one.
I
You can't.
remember one of the California ones. So you can't sleep on top of a
I
refrigerator
thought that
in
was
public. Is
Pennsylvania.
that Pennsylvania? Oh, it
I
could
thought that
be.
was
It could just be
Pennsylvania.
hold on, hold
Yeah.
on.
I know there's one in Pennsylvania too, because for those listeners who don't know, I'm originally from Western Pennsylvania. Um, I remember there was one that on back roads in Pennsylvania, you have to, like, stop and shoot a flare every mile to, like, warn off cows, and if you don't, technically it's like you're breaking the law.
No, you were right. It is Pennsylvania. You cannot sleep on top of a refrigerator outdoors. You can do it at home if you want to sleep on top of a
Indoors.
refrigerator at home in the privacy of your own home. That's fine, but you cannot do it outdoors. And it is illegal to sing in the bathtub, save your singing for the shower. So no singing in the bathtub, but you can sing in the shower.
Interesting.
And you you may not catch a fish with your mouth.
Somebody did it. That's the thing. Somebody did it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's pretty unethical. So you can't. Yes, bears, however, have not been held accountable for that.
Nope.
But
Nope.
but
Yogi
yes,
Bear. What's the
it's
But Yogi Bear? Wait, isn't that like a baseball player?
Yogi Berra.
Bear. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's a baseball player.
Very, very close. Very close.
Yeah, very close. I don't know
Um,
what he played for. I want to say Dodgers, but
sounds right. Yeah. But
when
yeah,
in doubt, just assume Dodgers.
and I mean, that's the thing. Like, someone's done this stupid stuff, and you have to kind of make these laws in order to prevent that stupid stuff from happening. So, just look up your specific state wherever you live, or whatever country you may be from. You probably have some weird laws you didn't even know about, and maybe technically a police officer could pull you over for some absurd thing. Hopefully not. But Hammurabi is known for having the first set of law codes in the world, as far as we know. Maybe tomorrow we'll discover an older law code, but as of right now, it is Hammurabi holds the record for the earliest law codes in human history.
And Yogi Berra played for the Yankees, just so nobody out there gets mad at me. It's either the Yankees or the Dodgers, if you're guessing. For most of them.
For the Dodgers. I mean, I didn't.
Unless
I know Pirates suck, and that's about it.
Yeah, that's kind of it. That's been for the last 40. That's been our entire the whole time we've been alive. They've
very accurate statement. The Hittites. Only thing they're not really in the area of Mesopotamia, like in between the rivers. They're more kind of towards what we know as modern day Turkey. They're in the northwest region from Mesopotamia, but they are known for their superior metalwork. They're the first to smelt iron, and this is not, they're not smelling iron, this is smelting. So smelting is the process of extracting metal from the mineral ore. And the way I kind of have my students remember it is that Hittites, the hit in there, like you are hitting the metal, because you're going to have to be able to hit that hot metal in order to shape that iron, right? You're not just going to put your hands and fold it like clay. I don't know if you know this, but you'll burn your hands.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Oh man, I almost had my house like go up in flames. My grill was just like crazy on fire.
Totally engulfed.
Not completely engulfed. All right, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but like I had steaks.
Mine was this past summer
completely burnt. Like the fire got inside of it out of hand, so I actually had to throw the little fire extinguisher and put it out.
No, I almost had to resort to the fire extinguisher this past over the summer. I was smoking ribs and forgot that I tried to set the timer for the smoker, and I didn't have the thermometer pushed into the ribs far enough, so it didn't set. So I came back like 2 hours later, and I'm like, oh my God, these are not going to be done in time. So I turned it on and let them smoke as long as I could and threw them on the grill. And I walked in the house for, not even kidding, like maybe 5 seconds. I walked in to throw something away into the garbage, which was right inside my back door, come back out and just like fully engulfed. Got the garden hose, which is thankfully right there. Otherwise, I would have had to go in and get the fire extinguisher.
Yeah, mine, I'm pretty sure that I forgot to empty the grease trap. And from previous a steak that I had, I think it was just completely full and it caught, and it was like
a little bit of Greek fire.
Yeah, basically. I mean, I can't put water on that. I had no other choice. I had to use the fire extinguisher. So, but yeah, really the only thing from the Hittites, they're from the area of Turkey, Asia Minor. They're technically, a Mesopotamian culture that's there, but they're known for their metalwork. They're Hittian.
And they existed alongside other Mesopotamian cultures. Like it's not like, and that goes for most of these. It's not like one exists and then it stops and the next one starts. They coexist. Like the Hittites were a pretty big part of that Mediterranean world, because they had connections with the Egyptians, and Ramesses was fighting wars with them during his reign. In fact, that's one of the earliest peace treaties is between the Egyptians and the Hittites. So, I mean, we tend to, since we do this very linear and we talk about, this civilization, then this one, we get in our heads that, okay, well, they just come right after each other. But that's not the case, at least not with most of them.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about that with the Hebrews too. When they came back in there, back to the promised land, it's not like somebody was holding their spot for them or saving their seat. Like there's people that have been living there that you're going to have to fight. And then that Hebrews eventually won, but then like people just keep piling on top and they want that land and they're going to invade you. So they're not all just leaving. Some are just getting mixed in together. So the next group of people, the Assyrians, and I made a reference with, I don't know if I think we referenced them a little bit, but I know I did in my episodes of Shankism. I referenced the Assyrians when we talked about the Hebrews. Nineveh would be their capital, which that would be kind of, I would say what? That's, I mean, almost dead center.
Are you gonna ask me how big it is?
No, I'm just, I'm not going down that rabbit hole again. Nineveh would be like on the Tigris River, and it would be kind of in the, I mean, dead center pretty much of Mesopotamia,
Yeah.
which in reality, if you're having a capital, it's probably the best place to set it up is in the middle of your whole territory. But the problem is here in America is that we didn't know exactly how big our country was going to get. And we kind of built right by the East Coast right there. Like ideally, the best place for it would be like Kansas somewhere, but
Right.
that,
Well, I mean, when you think about like Philadelphia, right, and the Pennsylvania is the Keystone State because it's
Mhm.
holding the two together. Philadelphia is about in the middle if you don't count the fact that we didn't really have Florida at the time, so it's just Georgia to Massachusetts,
Mhm.
which included Maine because that's a whole mess. But yeah, I mean, our capital and our seat of government and everything was right in the middle, and then we went this way, so we just expanded rapidly.
It's understandable. Uh,
Mhm.
Putting it onto a swamp, it doesn't really make sense, but whatever.
Oh well, uh, gotta drain the swamp.
Yeah,
That's all.
gotta do it
That's all.
somehow. But can't do it with straws because straws are banned. Only non-plastic straws, right?
Yes, and
Paper straws don't
reusable.
taste right. They don't
No,
taste
I can't do the paper because
I don't drink out of
they
it. I
start
don't
to
like it.
fray at the end. It's
I rather
weird.
just don't use a straw.
Yeah,
Drink it
just
old-fashioned way without one. But
straight from the cup.
wait, um, the first walled city? Are we talking about Jericho? I thought
No,
Jericho.
so I think so. I know that the biblical story associated with the walls of Jericho, and I know Jericho's old, but I don't think it was a walled city its entire time. I think Nineveh might be the first walled city.
Really? I always
I
thought the first walled city was Jericho because the doesn't the Bible talk about the walls being like so awesome? Like no one has a better
Yeah,
wall, the best
no,
wall
I
ever.
think that, but I think that's after. Like, I think that's after. Because I mean, you gotta remember, like Jericho is a very very old city, so you
Mhm.
got to figure that's gotta be from when the Hebrews come back from enslavement in Egypt, as near as I can figure. But I still don't know. Here we go. Let's ask the Google.
The
Uh,
Googs. Well, while you're doing that, I'll cover Ashurbanipal here. So Ashurbanipal would be the only real person from, not the only real person, but the main person you would have to know from the Assyrians. And the Assyrians are known for the way I kind of look at it. They're think of Assyrians assassins, like, and I think of Syria. Syria is a place where ISIS is located. You think ISIS, you think military, you think like bad news bears with them. And that's kind of the same thing here with the Assyrians. They're a warlike people. They're not even warlike. They're a warrior people.
mhm.
And some of the most barbaric things that they did to their captives is just atrocious. But it's kind of ironic that they were able to understand that, hey, we need to have a library. And one of the most famous libraries was Ashurbanipal's library. And it's just weird to think that you have this very intense military, but then you have back in it, you have this library that kind of sets it all up. Um, but they'll eventually fall to the Chaldeans over time. And their whole concept of basically if they lost a battle, the gods would end the world would come to an end. So they're not losing many battles.
Yeah,
So
the Assyrians had this mindset where, or well, and a lot of Mesopotamian cultures did, that your god was almost imbued in an idol. So a lot of the temples had like statues that were supposed to be the god. So you would go and pray before the statue, and the statue is what the god is going to work through to grant you this or that. The Assyrians' main god is Ashur, and so they would actually go wherever they conquered. They would go into the temples and destroy temples, and they would capture the gods of that city and take it back to the temple of Ashur, so that their god was basically holding all the gods of these other groups prisoner, and then they can extort them because if you don't want us to destroy your god, you'll do what we say. kind of thing. And so that it's just a little insight into their culture. And I couldn't find anything definite about that.
No.
I can't find a solid year for either
Hmm.
actually. For either one, like Jericho as a city goes back to about 8,000 BC, which is that Neolithic time period, which we would
That's what I was thinking.
guess.
8,000.
But it wasn't walled at that time, so I can't find. And that's just I spent 30 seconds looking, but um,
That seems like enough time.
yeah, I should be an expert at this point
Hey, you're good.
on,
I guess you never know.
on ancient barrier construction. Uh, or my PhD, I'll print it off later.
That's what the PhD stands for, right? Print.
Yeah. PDF, PhD. Same thing.
Print your heavenly doctrine. Doctorate. So
man.
the people that after the Assyrians, again, really all we're doing is just we're stacking same place on top of each other. The Chaldeans or the Chaldeans come next, and they're also known as the Neo-Babylonians. The Neo-Babylonians. Their greatest ruler was Nebuchadnezzar II, and I believe we've mentioned them before because this specific group of people and this specific person was involved with the Hebrews.
Mhm.
And the main thing, Mr. Woods, that they're known for is
Hanging Gardens,
of
Babylon.
Babylon.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Because I actually read. I know I don't have it here because I know it's at school. So I have a book that was the one that I used when I taught for RCC that semester. And I remember reading in there that they now think that the Hanging Gardens of Babylon weren't actually in Babylon. They think that they might have been in Nineveh.
The Hanging
Because there's
Gardens of
no,
Nineveh, then? Were they
yeah,
called
maybe.
Babylon or they called, what would they be
I
called?
don't, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, so actually here oh, I don't know though. The source is a little rough. It's the History Channel, history.com. But this isn't the article I read, but this is the facts that align with my preconceived notion, therefore they're correct. But the article is entitled "Hanging Gardens Existed, but Not in Babylon." But I want to say when I was reading about it, it mentioned, I can actually hear it mentions Sennacherib, the king of the world over the distance, had water course directed to the environs of Nineveh. So directing water to the cities of Nineveh based on recent excavation around the modern day Iraqi city of Mosul, which is where Nineveh is today. And the different relief carvings depict lush gardens watered by some form of aqueduct um, around flat terrains of Babylon, matching the more rugged topography of the Assyrian capital as it's described. So, may have actually been at Nineveh rather than at Babylon,
That's
but
interesting. I didn't know that.
may have in fact
They have.
existed too, like credible evidence to suggest that if nothing else, if it was possible in Nineveh, if they have evidence to say that you could have redirected water to that city to create it, then perhaps they did exist in Babylon even.
Would the Hebrews have anything to do with building it then?
Probably not.
Yeah. Interesting. That would kind of unfound a lot of things.
Yeah, I don't know.
That, well, regardless, the Hebrews, we talked about this, were enslaved. Whether they were in Babylon or whether they were in Nineveh, they were enslaved by the Chaldeans. And, we talked about in the previous episode, they kind of got throughout history, their history, the Hebrews, some bad luck when it comes to, people that want to enslave them. Maybe it just comes back to the monotheistic beliefs. Maybe it is just bad luck. I'm not sure. But that is known as the Babylonian captivity, which could be the Ninevian captivity.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I'm gonna have to look into that a little bit more,
Yeah,
but it is comforting that I know I read it. I know it was that textbook, and now that I like Google something resembling it, I am finding or other sources. National Geographic even has an article here. Um, we know the seven wonders of the ancient world existed, but were they all where they say they were?
I think the pyramids are where they say they are.
Yeah, that one would be a little bit hard to dispute, wouldn't it? Yeah,
um,
no, they're not actually there. That's just it's actually a
it's a mirage. You got
was that
bad.
was it Plato, the uh Platonian world of forms. So you actually think they're there, but they're not really.
Maybe, perhaps. Well, he built the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, Nineveh, for his homesick wife. And I was like thinking too, like looking at, pictures of it and what it would have looked like. We don't really know. We just kind of have descriptions, right? Or something close to that effect.
Yeah, I
But
think I could be wrong, but I want to say it was actually I want to say it was Herodotus that
described it.
gave us our. I'm just gonna spend the whole time looking stuff. I think it. I want to say it's Herodotus. I'm
Um,
staking my
Funny because
reputation.
like thinking where it's located and thinking the amount of irrigation that it would take to maintain all of that and the people that to maintain all of the plants in different places because his wife is it Amitis? Is that how you say it?
I always just say like Amidas, but
Amitis. Amy
Amidas,
Tis. Amitis, okay.
Miss Amy Tiss.
And she was from a lush area, with plenty of green, and she kind of just saw this Mesopotamian desert and was homesick and wanted to go back. And Nebuchadnezzar II, being the good husband that he was, I guess, decides to build this giant garden for her. And I can barely keep like a cactus alive and like a bamboo stick, or I think I don't even know what I have over there. My girlfriend gave me a couple of like plants. They're somehow still alive, but um, yeah. So the fact that they're keeping all that stuff up is kind of crazy. But
Herodotus did write about the Hanging Gardens
mhm.
um, when he was traveling through that part of the world. And Media, which is the Queen Amidas's or Amidas's homeland. It's like modern day Iran. It's on the north coast of the Persian Gulf, like that region. So I think it's like modern day Iran.
So meaning that he actually saw it, or he's not just taking the description of what somebody said it looked like. He's
Right, like
describing
he's
what he's
probably
seen.
been there. Yeah, he may have maybe even have like transplanted things from there directly from there.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
Interesting.
it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility if we're
Mhm.
talking about the actually being that close.
Right. Well, the Chaldeans will eventually fall to the Persians. Again, we're just stacking up civilizations on the same spot of land. Um, but before that, before we get to the Persians,
We build up to the Persians just
that's
for
it.
this
That's it. That's it. I thought
takes
that,
it off to the Lydians.
yeah. Spoilers. Let's talk quickly about the Lydians, who are located Asia Minor, which we know is Turkey, and they're more towards like the west end of Turkey, more on that western side, that
The
western
West End.
half. And really, what they're known for is coining money. They're the first people to use coin money and transitioning from a barter system where you're exchanging um, 5 chickens for 2 cows, right? That's a barter system. I mean, we still do that in some regards today, obviously, but this is more of a strict, even coin money system. 20 bucks is 20 bucks, right? Today.
Mhm.
But, I was having this discussion with my last year's class, and then we were talking about like how the evolution of money is, ever changing, and how people at first are very reluctant to new forms of exchange of, money. And
We'll
money is
check
whatever
out
we want it to
the
be. Money,
cryptocurrency talk. Is that where
currency
this
talk,
came from? Cryptocurrency, like
cryptocurrency.
Bitcoin.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's ultimately where we're headed. I
Mhm.
don't know how long it will take. I hope sooner rather than later. And there will be people that will push for the negatives, but people also push for the negatives when there was paper money, right?
Yeah.
Chinese invented paper money. People were like, "What is this? A stupid piece of paper doesn't mean anything." It only means something if people give it value.
Mhm.
And then people said the same thing for like credit cards, debit cards, checks, all these things. At first, people are very reluctant and push back. But if there's a quicker, faster way to exchange, to have that medium of exchange, humans need to take that route.
Mhm.
I think like one day we'll have probably like a chip in our wrist or something like that, and we just like hold it up to a product and we just like walk out with it, right? Because the chip will be hooked up to our cryptocurrency, whatever that may be. But Lydians were the first people to coin money, and the way that I always use, and I don't have anything here to demonstrate this, but if you think about it, uh, Lydian sounds like lid. Lid is a lid on a bottle, right? That's about the size of a coin. And then you think, oh yeah, Lydians, lid, the first people to coin money. There are like little tricks like that. It's just kind of, a
I have
way.
a lid. I have a
Awesome.
lid.
You have a lid?
If people can see, I've been showcasing it. Yeah, like a
Okay, I see now. Okay, yeah,
Gatorade bottle cap. Yeah,
yeah.
so a lid, Lydians.
That would be like a silver dollar, the one you have.
Yeah, that's $silver pancakes right there.
I normally use like the water bottle ones that are like,
Right.
something like that. So, but it is what it is. Persia. You want to talk about Persia?
Yeah, why not? 'Cause I like the Persians. So this is where I'm gonna throw out the plug for Carlin's Hardcore History,
Oh boy, here we go.
the episode King of Kings. Actually, all three episodes. He spends most of them talking about the Persians. But so your first real Persian ruler is Cyrus, because he builds the empire. And I like the analogy or the metaphor. I don't know.
I always mix
I'm not
those
gonna
up.
try and parse those right now, um, but that Carlin brings up in his podcast, and I don't know where he said that he got this from, but it was the first time I'd ever heard it. But the wooden shoes and the silk slippers, I think that would be a metaphor. As an English teacher, I should know this, but is it so like the as you're like climbing up the stairs, basically as you're building your empire, you're doing so in wood shoes, so it's uncomfortable and it's hard, and you have to really work hard to get it. And as you decline, you've shifted to the silk slippers. You've been in the ruling. You've been born to the purple. You're not a hard working fighter anymore. You've inherited this rule, and so you tend to grow a bit more soft, and that's as you're descending down, as your empire's failing. Or the royalty tends to be, more royal than they are in the beginning.
I don't remember that analogy or metaphor, but I do really like that. That's good.
Yeah, I thought that one's kind of stuck with me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so Cyrus would very much be the guy wearing these wooden shoes, because he was not born to the purple. He's not, some incredibly wealthy or well-to-do person. He's able to organize an effective army and conquer land with it, and that's basically what he does. Not only does he conquer land, but he takes things from the lands that he's conquering that he finds useful and effective, and applying them to make his empire more effective as he goes. And on top of that, he has a really persuasive message, because when he shows up to conquer your people, it's not so much that, okay, well, we're going to conquer you and subjugate you to our rule. You have to worship our gods. You have to follow me and only me. It's your life for 95% of the people living in your kingdom will not change. It's going to be the same thing it was yesterday and the same thing tomorrow. The people it really changes for is, the person who's at the top, or the people at the very top of your kingdom, because they're just now going to have to respect me as their leader. So he becomes the king of kings. So you still maintain your king, you maintain your society, religion. Maybe you pay a little bit more in taxes, but that's really about it. And you get all the benefits of being a member of the Persian Empire. There's going to be roads constructed through your territory. You're going to have a stronger economy. You'll end up with a money system. So, in most cases, the benefits outweigh the cost there, unless you're the Greeks and you're focused on, individual personal liberties, I guess would be their
Yeah, I would agree.
reasoning for that. But yeah, so Cyrus's tomb is actually still there. That's what you see. And Carlin brings this up. It's some of the epithets that he has on his tombstone. He like refers to himself as king of the four corners of the earth, and king of the universe, and all of these things. But it gives you an idea of, the mindset there, that he is this grandiose figure, and he died as he lived. He died in combat against the Scythians, which are like the Eurasian steppe peoples. So like
Mm.
out in Mongolia or maybe like Kazakhstan's out there, that region. Um, I mean, there's a lot of things to go with it, but basically he had taken his army there to continue expanding the empire. And he had met one of the queens of the Scythian tribes, this Timorous. He uh, sent a proposal of marriage to her. She declined. So they spurned lover there. So they fight, and
Yeah.
he ends up with his, and I don't think they're clear on who did it, but he ends up with his head cut off and on a stick.
Did she do it?
Yeah, I think they allude to that, and she probably took credit for it, but I don't know that anybody can say for sure.
So
Um,
is his head in there?
I think that they took his head back with them. I don't
But
think any of him's in there now, but
you don't think anything was
um,
in there? But that's just
no,
what.
I think it's just an empty tomb.
Hmm,
No, I don't know. I don't know. I would find it hard to believe that an archaeologist would allow Cyrus the Great's body to remain in its tomb if they could find it.
that's true. That's
I mean,
fair.
we've got a collection of mummies like in shrink wrap in London. So
Like that is one of like the bizarre things though, like thinking about that. Like you are just digging up. Like what's the time frame? Like after so many years you start digging up dead people
yeah,
and like
it's now okay because you're X years old. Yeah, I don't
yeah,
know.
it's
Well, it's like Vatican, right? The popes that are on display in like the glass cases out for everybody to see. Like you could set your coffee down on them and like it's in Lenin. I think isn't Lenin still like his body is still on display
I think so. It's just
in
weird.
Russia. Yeah,
It's so weird. I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know. We humans are
we are
strange
indeed.
beings. But um yeah, Cyrus, he's mentioned in the Hebrews mentioned, I mean, they see him as a
Mhm.
savior. They allow when Cyrus conquers um, all of, basically Mesopotamia there and conquers the Lydians and so forth, he returns, and we talked about this in the last episode, returns the Hebrews back
Mhm.
to their promised land, Canaan. Not all of them go back, but, enough of them do. And Cyrus was kind of the original freedom of religion guy,
Mhm.
that the Persians were just in general, which I always kind of admire that, that they're so progressive at a time when no one is, that
Right.
they are um
I think
champions
there's
of
like almost no, at least very 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 limited, but I think almost no slavery in the Persian Empire.
so crazy. We couldn't even get
In,
that
in
right
a
with
time
America.
where that was the bread and butter of conquering people. Like you
Mhm.
conquered people to get slaves. The Persians, on the other hand, are not doing that. And that's yeah, it made them. But then it also makes you very popular among the middle and lower class people, which is the people whose support you need to stop rebellions. So it might be why they did last
So
so long.
successful. Yeah, absolutely.
Now he does have a son that comes to power for like 15 minutes. His name's Cambyses, but I think he's assassinated. I think there's actually like a conspiracy surrounding that
Was the
assassination.
Darius.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that he was,
because he Cambyses goes to Egypt, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think so. Um, well, I guess we can talk about Darius in the next one here.
Mm.
Darius was able to gain the throne. And there's like some controversy because was he actually his son, or I feel like there was.
I think there's yeah, because there's different accounts. I think that Darius was like a senior official
Yeah,
that was like an advisor to maybe to Cyrus, but
Cambyses.
definitely to Cambyses. And
Yeah,
then Cambyses ends up dead, and Darius is like, "Yeah, okay, I can take care of this."
he said
So
with his last dying wish that he wanted me to rule over all of
he
Mesopotamia.
wanted to assure that no ruler would be appointed during the reign of this particular emperor. So no,
Yeah,
but yeah, no. So yeah, you got where I was going with that.
yeah,
Yeah, no. So I don't know exactly what the connection is there, and I should, and I feel like that's my responsibility to know as a history teacher. But I know I have heard this. I've heard a story both where he's like an administrator who takes over, and I've heard a story where he's like actually like a half son
I've
or
heard
something
both stories. Yeah.
for the throne, and maybe arranges the death of his brother. Um, I don't know.
Regardless, he's in power, and he breaks up this massive empire. And at the time, it will run into all the way into India. And this is no longer the little like Sumerian Mesopotamia. It's that, but it's all the way pushing into Greece. It's in Egypt. It's
Mhm.
pushing into India. It's massive.
The only reason Alexander gets credited for conquering more territory is because he came with some of Greece.
Mhm.
Because basically everything he conquers was what was once the Persian Empire.
Mhm.
Everything that he fights to get was the Persian Empire. The only thing that he takes that he basically inherits Greece from his father. So, to say that he was this great conqueror, it was already conquered once, and
Mhm.
that was with Cyrus and I guess to some extent
Darius.
Darius.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
Darius is more of like I saw recently an article in I think it was Newsella, the website, but where they referred to Darius as like I think they called him like the banker or the businessman or something like that.
Mm.
So that you've got Cyrus who's the conqueror, and then you move to somebody like Darius who's going to be the administrator. He's going to be somebody who rules, who's willing to figure out, how can I make this empire function the best it can. So, let's build roads, let's institute coined money, let's develop this imperial bureaucracy. I can't rule this whole place by myself. So take a pen out of, or take a note out of the Egyptian playbook, and let's cut it up into smaller pieces. So let's, divide this up into individual satrapies, which is their word for like provinces, and then take a governor for each one, and they're going to report back. I mean, we do that. We are. If we were an empire, we would be an imperial. We're a democratic bureaucracy here
Mhm.
in the United States. So you've got 50 states, you've got 50 governors who administer their state, and when they have growing concerns that they can't handle, they take that to the federal government. And then the federal government weighs in and makes whatever
Hopefully helps
decisions are
out.
necessary. Hopefully helps out. Hopefully doesn't maneuver a political chess piece there. But
Mhm.
there is some historical precedent for that because that's
Mhm.
definitely been done forever.
Yeah.
I mean, well, a good example of that actually of that for at least the United States would be desegregation of schools, right?
Yeah.
Like the governor was literally blocking the school, like he was on the steps of the school when the National Guard walked the kids in. So like that's a good example of the state government's not doing what they need to be doing. So the federal government has to go in and handle it.
Yeah.
If Bactria became a failing satrapy within the Persian Empire, no doubt that Darius would send troops there to handle whatever's going on.
Mhm.
Same concept.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, if you set up this massive imperial bureaucracy that you have to get to Bactria, you need a road to get there. You need lots of roads, and one of the main roads was the royal road,
Hmm.
and this stretched from one empire, one I think what through Persepolis,
Yeah,
and
from
out to
Sardis to Susa, I think are the two
Sardis
cities
to
on either
Susa.
end.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because Persepolis became the capital later, right?
Yeah, Persia Polis, Persia City. It's really it sounds
True.
nicer as Persepolis, but Persia
Persepolis,
City.
yeah, that's true. But it went
Guess
all the way up.
it's kind of like New York, New York, I guess, in that
Yeah,
way.
I guess it would be, yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, it's
Persia,
a little
New York
quicker.
City, Persia City in Persia.
Very clever, very clever. But yeah, that stretched, from one end of the empire to the other, and that's a great way of moving troops, moving products, moving trading. There's a lot of advantage to having a road that is protected and that is, you're not going to get lost in the woods. But it's also too, I mean, I think they had set up every 15 miles. They had to get a message across that
Mhm.
they'd have a station set up that they
Yeah.
have the horse ride out with the guy on it, obviously the messenger, and he gets to the next station, 15 miles, and there's a fresh horse that's already watered and fed and ready to go, and off he goes.
Yeah, and I mean, there's
So
people too. So if you make it so far and you can't complete the journey, then next guy hops on and takes off. I mean, it's
yeah,
for the ancient world. I mean, you're talking about being able to relay a message from from one end of this road to the other in I forget exactly how many. I did look this up before how many miles but I'm not even gonna try. I think it's okay. And I am gonna try it. I think it is. Watch me be incredibly wrong. I think it's something
you're
like
talking the railroad
20.
mileage.
Yeah, I think it's something like 2,400 miles. Now I'm
I
gonna
was
Google it.
thinking for some reason maybe like 1,500, but I'm probably way
Mm,
off.
Persian Royal Road. Oh, you were almost dead on
Yeah,
1677.
ooh,
Yeah,
close.
so I way overshot that. But
Yep, the
so
price is
man,
right.
there's exactly. Yeah, so you figure 1,600 miles. Let's just take that. So if that's
Mhm.
the distance you're going to travel, and you're the average rider galloping on a horse at full clip for most of the day, you might be able to cover. Let's say let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say you can get let's maybe 120 miles in a day or something
Mhm.
like that. That's pretty good travel distance. And if you're able to switch out and basically keep that message going nonstop, you can relay a message from one end of the empire to the other in 2 weeks.
Yep.
When before that may have taken 2 months.
Mhm.
So you've just expedited the ability to send messages, so you can quickly react to problems going on elsewhere in your empire. Because it's not like that guy in Bactria that's having problems can call you up or shoot a text and let you know, hey man, things are getting a little out. He can't get on Twitter and put pictures up of what's going on and just kind of call you
Come
out and be
help
like,
me,
hey,
come
can you
help
help me? No, he's got to send a messenger, and that's going to take longer. So by the time I mean, he's not going to get aid that season. He's going to be waiting, but at least he can rest assured that it's likely coming.
me. Mhm.
Whereas, in other parts of the world, I mean, how do you even get a message to somebody, let alone ensure that anything's coming back?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's like 1,600 miles. It's I think America's like around 2,000 some. So it's like
Mm,
almost the distance of all the way across America. So that's
yeah.
pretty impressive to do for sure. If we continue, um,
Also, the
uh,
empire was 2,500 miles
yeah, stretching from one to
end
the
to
other, but
end.
the whole thing wasn't. Oh yeah, it wasn't all the way. The whole railroad wasn't. So it was basically like 1,600 miles of the 2,400 mile stretch. But Darius has a son. This we do know for sure.
Hmm.
Xerxes was his son, and he's the one that kind of gets tries to finish what his dad started.
Hmm.
Darius does get into Greece and is kind of humiliated, and because Greece is this small little power separate city states, which we'll eventually get to, and here is Persia, this massive empire, powerful, conquering everybody, and they kind of get Persia gets smacked in the face by
Hmm.
these Athenians, and it's embarrassing for Darius. He goes back and tries to build up his army, but he just dies. He doesn't die in battle back there, does he?
I don't believe so.
I thought he was prepping to go back to Greece, but he
Yeah.
on his time prepping he died, and that's when his son Xerxes
Hmm.
took over that kind of vendetta that Darius had against Greece, and this is when Xerxes tries to conquer the Greek city states, with Sparta and Athens and all that, but is repelled repeatedly. And he is unsuccessful, even if he has, you know, maybe Herodotus says whatever it was 200,000, 500,000 soldiers, or a million, 2 million. I've heard so many different things.
Yeah,
Regardless, the
that
Persians
number's all
had
over the
a ton of
place.
soldiers, and the Greeks had basically nothing. So Persia would exist for almost 200 years, but would decline, especially when Alexander the Great comes into play.
And I was just pulling it up to look because I know Xerxes is assassinated. I was trying to figure out, like I knew a little bit of the story, and this is actually video game talk. If you are a fan of video games, um, the Assassin's Creed Odyssey downloadable content. The first Blade, you actually pick up the story of his name is Artabanus. And so I think he goes by a different name in the game, but that's who it is. He is the royal bodyguard of Xerxes, who is responsible for assassinating him. And then you kind of pick up his story as in the video game world. But yeah, so Xerxes was assassinated by one of his own bodyguards, in Persepolis.
Bodyguards always get you.
460. What did it say? 465, I think. Yeah, 465 BC is when he's assassinated.
Not ideal. Not ideal.
Yeah, and that's just a short few years after the wars with Greece. So that's like the 480s. I think maybe even 470 was the 490 was Thermopylae, so 480 would have been like Plataea. Does that sound right? Or was 490 was Marathon.
I think it's 480 sounds more correct.
I don't know why I'm not doing this on the computer. Would have been
Siri.
Yeah, so Battle of Plataea is 479.
Yeah.
So yeah, 480 would have been Thermopylae. So 490 was probably Marathon.
So the unification of the Persian Empire, just the main things from it: the royal road, coined money. Lydians had it; they just kind of borrowed that idea and standardized it and made it like mainstream through the entire empire rather than a small area like the Lydians. And they had their imperial bureaucracy. We talked about that. That's huge. You're going to see that with China. You'll see it with Rome. You'll see it with a variety of other countries and civilizations we talk about. It's basically you have an emperor. He presides over a large area with multiple cultures and peoples, and he breaks that up into a bureaucracy of government workers, governors and so forth. Okay.
Yeah, anytime you have something very complex, breaking into smaller parts makes it more simple to accomplish, and so
more hands makes less work, right?
Yep.
So
sometimes,
depending on who's helping you.
Yeah.
If you have someone else trying to help you tie your shoes while you try to tie your shoes, it's not really going to work too well. So the more hands you get involved in that, the worse it's going to get.
Facts. Anytime I try to help my son do anything, it's just better to just let him do it or let me do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Working together. He's too much like me. Good. So I don't know that I've actually settled on a way to pronounce this. So I have seen, and I've always gone with Zoroastrianism.
Yeah.
But I've heard it pronounced with like a softer, so like Zoroastrianism or like Astrianism. I don't know. Because it's like back to Georgia Tsoukalos, right? Where it's what did it it's like Secureless, where there's an R in it. It's not even supposed to be. Anyway, but I'll stick with Zoroastrianism because that's what it looks like it should be.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is essentially a religion this is the religion of the Persians, though they didn't push it on others. It is kind of what was founded for them or what they followed. But it's founded by the prophet of Zoroastrianism, Zoroaster, who was trying to answer kind of the ultimate question for most religions, like why is there suffering, or why does everything suck? How can I explain this? And so he basically explains it in a duality of good and evil. You've got a God who is good and a God who is evil, and they are in constant conflict and competition for the attentions and beliefs and souls of those here on Earth. So Ora Mazda and Ahriman or Angaramaya are the two gods. And so it's this constant dualist conflict between the two. So he does argue that humans have free will, and that um, that the writings, the Avestas, are basically how you should, try to navigate life in the light of Ahura Mazda, right? In the good side. I think there's also fire is closely associated with Zoroastrianism. I remember when Game of Thrones was a thing. Um, I
Yeah.
remember I was reading something about when George R. R. Martin was basically coming up with all the different things, and he drew a lot of information for like the Red Ladies and like the Lord of Light from Zoroastrianism. So like the fires and the sacrifice to fire and all of that was drawn from Zoroastrianism. So
Hmm.
I don't know a whole lot about that aspect of it, and it's not a religion that I know a ton about.
Hmm.
Again, probably ought to rectify that. And I'll probably say that the next time we talk too. But if that's the case, if that information is accurate, then so fire would be associated with it as well.
That makes sense, like given like the way the show went about and that aspects of it. So
Hmm.
that's interesting. Yeah, I mean that's like cool thing about history is that people will use it to create awesome TV shows or movies and things like that, and you know they draw ideas from the past. So we kind of already went over that religious tolerance, royal road, bureaucracy,
Yeah,
Zoroastrian.
about the only thing added in there is the Zoroastrianism.
Yeah, freedom of women in Persian culture too.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah,
that's
in their culture, I think we might talk about this when we did when we did slash do the episode on Greece. But I think we talked about Persian women as it related to like Alexander and how like the his wife Roxanne was Persian,
mhm.
and just kind of like how she was a presence at court and had that. Um, the confidence and ability and the feeling of freedom to behave that way was not something that the Greeks were necessarily used to. And that was something that was well established in Persian culture.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Moving on to the Phoenicians. Now they are not they're in Mesopotamia, but they're kind of on the eastern edge of the
Yeah.
Mediterranean, which is on the western edge of Mesopotamia. So we kind of include them in this. But they're unlike their fellow Mesopotamian civilizations because they're not warlike. They're more concerned about trading. They're all over the Mediterranean. Any of the port cities that you see in the Mediterranean, they are founded by these Phoenician people. That
Hmm.
they're not like this Phoenician Empire where they're looking to kill people. They're just looking to trade and make money and do their own thing, really. But they're known for their shipbuilding, their seafaring. They'll pretty much own the Mediterranean, and we'll talk about them. Yeah, well, we'll talk about them here in a second, but what they'll eventually become into. They'll sail beyond the Straits of Gibraltar. And if you don't know where Gibraltar is, it's where Africa and Europe meet by Spain and uh, what's the country there? Let's say
So Morocco,
Morocco. I would say some of the name. That's definitely one
the,
place I want to
the
go
the
to. But
Pillars of Hercules is the
yes.
like name from antiquity.
Hmm. I'm thinking when we go to Spain, I know we start in southern Spain. That's this coming summer. I think I don't know. I'm actually not sure. I don't know if we'll venture over that way
You've
or
got to
not.
be able to just hop a boat.
That'd be
I
so
mean,
nice.
it's so close.
Yeah, it really
There's
is.
no way that there's. I mean, it would almost be like going from like Ireland to Northern Ireland. There's not really like a customs or anything like that because you're essentially in the same country, even though it's
Yeah,
governed by a different group of people. I wonder if because they're that close. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But they are known for their purple dye, and as we'll study throughout this course, purple is a significant color. Purple is the color of royalty. It doesn't have the same significance that it does today because colors in clothing and so forth are very easy to come by at this point, very cheap to come by. But in ancient times, purple was the color of wealth and royalty, and the process was, getting that snail, right? It's a snail,
Mhm.
and like I don't know the exact whole process to it. I don't think it's something he's just grabbing a snail and just like coloring it, but there's like
Like a highlighter. It's just
I'm sure there's something was soaking the threads for multiple
probably
hours
has
in sunlight.
something to do with like the shells or something. I don't know. I
Yeah, I
honestly don't
remember
know.
watching a video a couple of years ago on it, but I don't know any more than that. But I do know that it is a color that was significant then,
Mm.
and they were the prime people for it that sold that and made that.
Well, even
So,
earlier when we were talking about the Persians, I think I said "born to the purple"
yeah, you
when I
did,
was
yeah.
talking about like how Cyrus was not or whatever. But that phrase "born to the purple," born into a ruling class, a wealthy class, and that's
Mhm.
because you could afford this purple dye.
Yeah, and that's one thing too. Like, if you heard somebody say that but didn't know the context, you'd probably think that person's like an idiot. Born to the purple, that doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense. Like, you're the one that doesn't understand, and that's another thing. The more information you know, the better off you're going to be, and you'll be able to make sound decisions and understand things when people say them immediately. I mean, even us. I mean, we still Google a lot of the stuff that we don't know, right?
You know, we
Most of the
spent
stuff we
half the
don't know.
episode doing that.
Yeah, I know,
Like,
and that's
you
and
know,
that's
but
the thing.
that
So we can hopefully get it to stick. Long term, we don't have to do that, but it's a process that will never end.
mhm,
That you just want to when you're in public and when you're in a space that you're communicating with people, you don't want to have to Google everything. Like you can't sit in an interview and have your phone out and just Google every question that they have. You
mhm,
just have to know it, right? Um, but anyways, back to the Phoenicians. They'll establish their capital in Tyre, Tyre, whatever you want to call it, and that's on the eastern side of the Mediterranean, the very edge there towards Mesopotamia. But they'll set up colonies all over the place. One of the main ones they'll set up is Carthage, which is where Tunisia is today, and it's right by Sicily, the island of Sicily, and it's very, very close to Rome. And we'll talk about that in a later episode when we talk about Rome and Carthage and the Punic Wars. And they'll have a power struggle, like superpowers of the day. Basically, if Russia and America went to war with one another, that's pretty much what's going on in this
mhm.
ancient battle. You have anything?
Over something crazy small. Russia and the U.S. go to war over the Kodiak Islands off the coast of Alaska. Territory must be reclaimed.
Well, it would be the Illusion Islands, wouldn't it be? One of the islands is Kodiak.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I always
Yeah,
just called them the Kodiak Islands. I
they're the
didn't know.
Illusion
The
Islands,
illusion.
and then the only reason they call them the Kodiak Bear is because the bear is only located on
It's like
Kodiak
a
Island.
subspecies
Yeah.
of it. Oh, they're like a subspecies of grizzly bear, right?
Mhm.
They're just like a yeah.
Don't I almost said I don't know why they call it the camera, but that's Kodak. Very different.
It's late. It's late. We can
I guess
forgive
you can
it.
only take pictures of Kodiak bears with
Only,
Kodak.
only in
Eating
the Aleutian
Kodiak cakes.
Islands. Yes,
But
accurate.
the Phoenicians, they had the shipbuilding, the sailing, the trading, like the world's best traders, and they're trading all these different products. But what they are known for is their alphabet. Um, do you want to take it from here? You just want to
Yeah,
talk about the alphabet?
yeah. So when you are learning a language, when especially English, we use this a lot. When you're studying the sounds that these letters make or words, how to pronounce them, and how the sounds are generated by combining different letters. That's the study of phonics, and we call it phonics because of the Phoenicians. They're the ones who developed this original alphabet. And so an alphabet's different than any of these written languages. When we talk about like the Sumerian cuneiform or the hieroglyphics for Egypt, whatever it might be, the seals in India, when we get there, whatever it might be, those are pictographs. They might have sounds associated with them. You might be able to make different words by combining them together, but they're not an alphabet because they're not universally interchangeable. So with like our alphabet, for example, it's why the game Scrabble works, right? So you can shake up a bag of just individual letters and make words out of them. if you tried to play Scrabble with hieroglyphics, it wouldn't work. Or the same thing with
That would be intense. I would love.
wouldn't it?
Definitely,
Wouldn't it be? Oh man. Yeah, because but with hieroglyphics, right? The individual image represents something, and then when in connection with something else, it makes something completely different. Plus, it has its own sound that it changes completely next to something else. Ours don't do that much, right? Like you have kind of like hard and soft sounds for each letter, but they don't change the structure of the word entirely. That's why you can see things like if you read older documents from, well, even other English speaking countries, but older documents from, say, the United States, the early founding of the United States. You'll see where they spelled things differently. They'll use Y's where we don't use Y's anymore, or they'll include an S somewhere that we don't use it or use. So they do this because that's how they wrote it. We can still read it because we can omit those letters because they don't change the whole meaning of the word just by being there. If you took a word in hieroglyphics and you stuck a random hieroglyph in the middle, you wouldn't be able to read that word anymore because it changes the entire structure of that word. So that's alphabets allow you to, they basically give you the tools to build anything in your language. And that's actually why pretty much everything we've been talking about, where we show you the pharaohs' names or the Sumerian cities and whatnot, and the word Sumeria, all these things are in our alphabet. That's why you can read them. Hopefully, you've been able to follow along with that. But because you can read them, because we've constructed them with our alphabet, what we've basically done is take the sound of the word from their language and use our letters to mimic what that sound would be like. So, Akhenaten is not spelled with an A in hieroglyphics. He's got random, I don't even know what his are, but he's got random hieroglyphs that represent his name. But we can't do that. We can't just throw a couple letters in there and have it work. We would have to use our letters to construct that sound or reconstruct it. And that's how our language works. But it allows obviously, as you can tell, there's a lot of flexibility there. So we can do that with pretty much anything. We can create new words for new things. We do it all the time. Unfortunately, we get some real interesting ones out there, but we are making new words to evolve with us. Our language grows and evolves with us.
Yeah, it's just really interesting, that when new concepts and new creatures and new anything, we just have to make up a word for it, and and
I
we
think
just
that's
put some letters
called.
together like Scrabble. I like that way of describing it.
Yeah,
Scrabble.
that was an on the spot one. I'm going to use that,
Good. I like
but
that. Yeah.
I think the word for that is philology.
Philology.
Speaking, yeah, talk about making up words. Philology is the branch of knowledge that deals with the structure, historical development, and relationships of languages and language. So, how language and words are constructed. The study of is philology, if you're interested.
Philology, study of words. Gotcha.
You get to then tell people you're a philologist
I'm a
and let them
philologist.
try to figure out what that means.
Yeah, you made it
At a
up.
dinner party, they're sitting there like, is that the same thing as a
Well,
phlebotomist?
if you made it up, you technically wouldn't be wrong, right?
I guess not.
Because philologists, like their words, and a philologist is a word, and the
I
word is made
wonder
up.
how that.
So
I wonder what the roots of that are because I'm thinking like philo is love.
the love of making words.
It really might boil down to that. Philologia, which is Greek for so philologia is Greek for love of learning, translates to the French, and then ology is study of. So it's the study of the love of learning. In this case, I guess it's learning languages specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because there's nothing really in the word that identifies it as being about language. Um,
No.
what's to say? It really isn't even separated from like philosophy, other than the sophos part. Wisdom and learning, I guess, was where the difference is.
That's what I'm gonna go with.
I don't know.
They are the first people to create an alphabet, which is huge, as Mr. Woods described. Oh, that is all of the Mesopotamian civilizations that we talked about. We talked about a good bit of them. Thank you for joining us in this probably one of our longest podcasts.
Is it? I'm sure.
I think so.
I'm sure we're well in over an hour at this point.
To be fair, there's a lot of civilizations that we talked about, and I think that's an appropriate amount of time.
I mean, normally we spend an hour or so on one, and we covered like 7. So when you divide that out, you can listen into this. This is an episodic episode.
Mm-hmm.
You can listen to it in pieces, self-standing pieces. So yeah, I don't think we should feel bad about this.
No, definitely not. Be very proud. All right. This has been In the Back Room. I'm Mr. Shank.
And I'm Mr. Woods.
And the cause of fear is ignorance.